giving the signal, like, come up here. And then he curls up right by my head, puts his butt in my face. The things we do for love.
Yep.
I've probably inhaled more Dinor fart fumes in my sleep than I want to admit. Huh? You fart right in my face? Be honest. D. Be honest about it, D.
I'm just like, hello.
He's so sleepy. He's still so sleepy. Batter up, hear that call. The time has come for one and all to play ball. We are the members of the All-American League. We come from cities near and far. We've got Canadians, Irish ones, and Swedes. We're all for one, we're one for all, we're all American. Good day to you. As is customary, somebody's just endlessly running a lawnmower.
There's no escape.
Yeah, no, not in an area like this. I swear, dude, this place is like even worse than the other neighborhoods that I've lived in that are just as dense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in those neighborhoods, you know, every other day, maybe every couple of days, you'd have somebody getting their lawn mowed. Here, it's like a daily thing at the same time. I'm just gonna sit here and whine about it. Lawnmower is good ASMR. Okay. Okay. Did you have a good B-day? Yeah, that was good. Chilled, had some cake, watched some movies. What are your thoughts on lawns, ecological effects, philosophical implications, how it intersects with our relationship with aesthetic bending the earth? Or, I mean, I don't know. It's just become like it almost certainly started with like big estately manors and stuff that had neatly trimmed golf course level grass in front of it. It's clearly an outcropping of that. One of the things that typified like 19th century and 18th century rich people was they created these beautiful resplendent gardens, right, to walk around in. You can imagine some of the stuff they had. Beautiful, perfectly manicured, had like a team of 10 people that kept it going, you know what I mean? Hedge mazes and bonsai forests and all kinds of crazy shit. And then America comes along and, you know, we have this radical idea that everybody can have a little slice of that. And no matter how much we hated those oligarchs, we couldn't help but like emulate them with our little McMansions and our little patches of green grass. And it's a lot of it is about like, you've heard the term keeping up with the Joneses. It's a term here in America. That means, the Joneses are the stand-in for your neighbors. And when your neighbors keep a nice, crisp-looking lawn, you gotta keep it nice, crisp. Your lawn has to be just slightly crisper. Your neighbors put in like a ridiculous rock feature or something, man, you gotta get one too. Otherwise, you're falling behind them Joneses. And it's like an internally uh, enforced idea, but it's also enforced externally, because if you have a house where you don't really care about the lawn and stuff, you're just trying to live there, and your lawn looks ratty, I can almost guarantee you're going to get some complaints from your neighbors, as if your ratty lawn is somehow ratting up their lawn. You know what I mean? And so it's about conformity ultimately. Philosophically speaking, it's about conformity, and it's a pretty destructive type of conformity as well, because this like infatuation with looking like we have like a little tiny English lord's garden in the front or back or both of our house sucks up how much groundwater, puts how much carbon into the air. I mean, you can hear it spewing right there. And every time I do one of these, fucking smoke, shit, carbon being flung into the atmosphere, tiny little engines. And the sad thing is that when it comes to doing this work, there are manual tools that make hardly any noise that'll do this work. And the only excuse I can think of for having like a big ass push mower or a lawn mower or whatever is if you've got like a big golf course sized thing to mow. You know? This back here would take me like 10 minutes max on one of those like manual little push blade mowers to keep trimmed back. When I was a kid, I used to have a push edger where you would put the blade on the ground, line it up with the edge of the concrete. That had a little like lever thing that would kind of like push up against the concrete to guide you, and you would just. It would take me 5 minutes to do that to this backyard. So in 15 minutes, completely done with my gardening back here. You know.
Because everyone wants to have the lawn around here, but no one wants to do it themselves. They want to hire people to do it.
Yeah. And that's another, that's another aspect of it. It's, in my opinion, it's just like wasted labor. Hiring people to travel around and manicure other people's lawns. Like that to me lets me know how much people really genuinely care about their lawns. Like if you were really into like, man, I want that lawn to look just so, you do it yourself. You wouldn't hire some other dude to come once or twice a week to fucking trim your shit for you if you really cared about it. So really deep down, it's all about appearing a certain way from the outside. If somebody drives down your little cul-de-sac, you want to make sure that if they look at your house, they picture success. They picture success, they picture a person that's got their shit together. And,
I wonder, like, how common it is, like, outside the U.S. to see your house as, like, a commodity. Like, it's a property value thing to have your lawn such and such way.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't traveled abroad ever at all. So I wouldn't know. I do know that in some areas where it's just not practical to keep a lawn, people have lived without them for a long time. Like Arizona, you pretty much don't see lawns there. It's just ridiculous to try and keep a lawn when it's, over 100 degrees for 4 months out of the year and hardly ever rains. And so people do these like little lava rock lawns or pebbles or whatever out in front of their house, which, don't need to be watered, don't need to be weeded, don't need to be gardened, don't need to be hoed, don't need to have 18 little lawn mowers sucking up all the gas. I'd recommend to go to Denmark to see their wild growth lawns. They're really cool. That's the kind of thing that I want, honestly, eventually. Whether I end up in a little more established neighborhood or, out in the middle of nowhere, I really just want to kind of let the land do what it do.
Like monoculture really doesn't exist in nature.
And you get all kinds of just wonderful little things that come to visit you if you live kind of out away from people, and you don't screw up your land totally. You get all kinds of wonderful little creatures that come and visit. Little insects, little rodents, little birds. And I'd say just keep it trimmed back away from your house. Give yourself a little pseudo yard or whatever that you keep cut back, and then just let the rest of it do what you do. Would saying you want to save the bees make a difference? I heard it's a genuine problem when everyone mows their lawn. Yeah, I mean, there are times like this lawn here got mowed yesterday, and it was like a forest of dandelion stalks with flowers that would open and close with the sun, tons of pollen being generated for bees, and now it's nothing. Now it's just like a stack of dandelion fluff that will need to grow all those stems back and stuff. And there could have been, 15, 20, 30 bees out here yesterday when they mowed this, feeding when they mowed it. Well, you kill 30 bees, that's 30 less bees that the hive has. Then you multiply that by 100 lawns or whatever, and you start to get the idea.
Little flowers are fighting back, though. There's already a clover.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're going to come right back. They grow like weeds because they are.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this lawn back here is just completely and utterly dandelion greens. A little bit of Bermuda grass mixed in with it, but it's just created its own little ecosystem out here, and I prefer that. Yeah, long grass is nice, and just a wild growing land is nice. If I end up living in a more mountainous place, I won't really have to worry about that. I think it would be cool to live in a place that just had natural, like, pine needle ground cover, just that natural forest floor.
Yeah, weeds are really only a problem if you have, like, food that you're trying to grow.
Sure. You make a little garden or whatever, you got to keep the weeds from choking out your garden.
Yeah.
But that's different. That's like functional. You're growing a tomato, or you're growing some cucumbers or some melons or whatever. Sand is nice. Yeah.
It gets everywhere, though.
It's rough and it's coarse. It gets everywhere.
Don't fuck on the beach. That sounds like a horrible idea.
It's a sandy enterprise. Gets near cracks and crevices. Yeah. Moss would make a cool yard. Yeah. It would be a hard place to keep a house, though.
Yeah.
Moss needs lots and lots of, like, liquid. So it'd be kind of tough. Question, still wear masks in public? I still take one with me and kind of go with my gut. If I'm going to a place where I'm going to be right up against a whole lot of people, I throw it up. And if not, then not. Underground houses are where it's at. Oh yeah, I like underground houses too.
You just gotta find the perfect hill for a hobbit hole.
Yeah. Thoughts on HOAs? I've lived under HOAs before. I think they're pretty silly. I think that they kind of exacerbate all the problems that we're talking about by just kind of like ensuring that everybody has to spend an exorbitant amount of money keeping up their fucking lawn and bullshit. I would never buy a house in an HOA that was under an HOA again. The first place I ever bought my little condo was an HOA. And I remember, I can't remember what it was. I hung a sheet up in front of one of the windows that faced the street because I was poor and I couldn't afford to go get curtains and curtain rods and shit. And I remember getting a letter from the HOA saying that I wasn't allowed to put anything in the windows but curtains. And I was like, fuck. So I went and I spent money I didn't have to get like a cheap ass curtain set so it wouldn't have the sun just beating down on my face in the morning. And then like a couple months later, some people moved into the unit that was upstairs and right across from mine. And they put tinfoil in their windows. And it was that way for years. So that's kind of the weird thing about an HOA is that they're kind of toothless but kind of not. Homeowners Association is what HOA stands for. Tinfoil does look sketchy. I just don't care though. You know, I didn't make a stink about because this was a person that's like their building was right. It's the same building as my building, so right next to my window is one of their windows. I didn't care. It's not my house. I really don't give a fuck, and I really don't care what people driving by think of my house either. It's not what I own it for, you know.
It's probably like for power saving. It's really good insulation to have like that tinfoil shit all over your windows.
Probably so.
I had to do it when I lived in like a shitty apartment that didn't have like any insulation. Fucking tinfoil all the windows just so it wasn't 50 degrees in the fucking winter.
Yeah. Definitely growing weed now. No, I would have smelled it. Literally like connected to my apartment or to my condo, so I would have definitely known if they were growing over there. Not only that, but I would have been purchasing from them as well.
Yeah, they would have noticed a stoner living across from them.
Yes. I would think they would. So is that what we're going to talk about today? We're just going to do a lawn stream. The philosophy of lawns. I love it. My grandparents once had a weed plant in their garden. Some bird had dropped a seed there. Yeah, some bird called your grandma. Your grandma was the bird that dropped the seed there, dude. You know they were rolling that up and smoking it. Your grandparents, oh, we don't know where that came from. Wink, wink. Dude, they were getting stoned, fooling.
Dude, if it was that easy, then...
Yeah. It's a strange ivy plant. Some strange ivy plant is growing over there. It's a chemtrail being made above you, I know. Constant. At least I know I'll be good and docile today. They've given me my dose of docile gas. Satire, by the way. YouTube. I don't believe in chemtrails. Have you seen gay frogs yet? No, I have not. Not yet. see that the Conger ice shelf collapses in Antarctica and that the Doomsday ice shelf will collapse in 3 to 5 years. Talking about the one that's like big enough that it's supposed to like create like when it fails, the whole thing could go and it could like make this giant tidal wave that wipes out Australia and shit. Yeah, I've heard about that. There's a couple of those ticking time bombs. There's an island somewhere that like geologists say is just waiting to collapse into the ocean, and when it does, like New York City's right in the path.
Maybe we should avoid the coasts.
Maybe.
What if like it fucking made this giant pool like in the Central Valley, like when the oceans rise?
I used to have dreams about that.
Yeah.
I used to have a recurring dream when I was little that I was standing on my property, looking at the Sierra Nevadas, and that all my family was standing there with me, and we would just watch the mountains, and I would just look at it because I was so familiar with that sight. And then all of a sudden, just a big wave would come over it. Now, of course, that would mean that the ocean was coming in from the east, which would be interesting indeed.
Apocalypse dreams.
Yeah, I had a recurring dream like that. I would literally wake up when the water hit us. And be like, oh. Had that recurring dream. I had recurring werewolf dreams where somebody in my family was a werewolf. I used to have recurring dreams quite a bit. I don't really anymore. When I was young, though. Why we always wake up when it's getting good? I don't know. It's just the way it goes, man.
I'll like wake up with like tripping on a stair in my dream.
Yeah.
That falling sensation.
Oh yeah. The tripping sensation that you get when you fall in a dream. Yep. I had tornado dreams when I was a kid. I used to dream of like funnel clouds in my little hometown, like forming, and I'd be watching one, and then I'd look over my shoulder and there'd be another one, like a big tornado apocalypse type of thing. So I was obsessed with the end from a young age. Could smell it coming, man.
What do you think you watched that?
I don't even know if it was something that I watched. When I was having those dreams, I was like probably like 7, 6. Maybe. Oh, you know what? Maybe like the Noah's Ark cartoon that my parents had for me. Maybe I was like, that's the only thing that I can think of where I would have been exposed to even the idea of a tidal wave.
Yeah.
Although I was a kid that was interested in like all kinds of like factoids and shit. They used to buy me the Guinness book every year. Mm-hmm. We had the whole Encyclopedia Britannica set when I was little. Mm-hmm. And I would look up tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, tidal waves, tsunami. You know what I mean? I loved reading about those things. And so maybe it was that. Maybe it was a little combo. Memorable dreams. Dreams are so weird to think about. The idea your mind has a movie in your head when nothing else is going on. Yeah. Gotta love dreams. I used to have a recurring dream where I would exist in void, forced to be silent and forced to see nothingness. Oh. Edgy. That's an edgy dream.
Well, I don't know what Dynor's dreams are, where he has little puppy dreams where he's twitching and shit.
Chasing rabbits.
Yeah.
Chasing something. He's barking and running. That sounds like nonsense. It's a dream. I used to have dreams where I was floating above my physical body, could see myself in third person from above. Super vivid. I'll never forget it. Yeah. I had a recurring nightmare when I was a kid that had that as an element. You have a frequent area you visit in your dreams, like a hometown or city? No. I will, when I have memorable dreams nowadays, I will typically find myself in a place of my past. So there's not any real particular place that I visit. It'll be just some place that I've lived in. You know, that's identifiably, oh yeah, this is my little shitbox apartment in Arizona. Oh yeah, this is my condo. Oh yeah, this is Texas. Oh, this is Louisiana. Like, I'll remember the interiors of the houses that I've lived in. But it's hardly ever even germane to the dream, like where I am. I've read that most people have recurring dreams. It's just not sequential that we remember our dreams, but that there's often like pervasive patterns in people's dreams over the course of multiple nights. Brainwave studies and whatever. Pretty neat. Especially terrifying nightmares stick out in your memory. Dude, that one, I had this dream, I think I've told you guys about it before, where I used to listen to music every night when I went to sleep. I still kind of like have my phone with something in the background usually, and sometimes that shit will creep into your dreams. And so I used to have this old stand-up stereo thing that was made in the 70s. It was like a little, almost like a jukebox looking thing. It's very strange. It had an LP platter on the top, 8-track player, and it was a manual tuner radio. It had this panel on the front of it that was made with this like frosted plastic stuff, and behind it there were lights that would light up with the beat, like red, green, blue, yellow, you know, like a disco type looking thing. And my parents had it for a while, and they got something else, and so that was my little room stereo. And I would dream that I was hovering over myself with that stereo on, and like see my room from top down, and I would watch this like kind of psychodrama play out, where my closet door, I had one of those closets that had the big standing door on a track that would slide like this, where, you know, you could get into either side of it, and that would be closed. And then like in the dream, when a commercial would come on, so whenever a song would stop playing on the radio and a commercial would come on, that closet door would open just a little bit, and I'd see something in there, like looking. And then as time went on in the dream, it would get more bold. So when a commercial came on this next time, it would like start to come out. And in my dream, it was this dream, the beast in the dream was based heavily on Meg Mucklebones from Legend. There's a very short interlude in the movie Legend, where, you know, the main character Jack and this group of pixies and dwarves or whatever is going through the swamp, And then Meg Mucklebones is this horrible hag, hunchbacked thing with long fingers, and stringy black hair that comes up out of the swamp and tries to eat them. That shit scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. So it was basically Meg Mucklebones in my closet. And every time there was a commercial, she would get bolder and bolder and bolder and bolder. She would come closer to me. She'd come out of the closet and be like hovering over me, and then the music would come back on, and she would like scurry back into the closet. And that was definitely a melding of several different horror themes that I had been exposed to at a pretty young age, because my parents didn't really care what I read or watched. So there's a short story by Stephen King that I can't remember the name of it. I think it's in Graveyard Shift, that centers around that whole closet being open just a crack, and how there's something in there, you know. I'd read that scared the shit out of me. Of course, obviously, Meg Mucklebones had scared me enough to show up in my dreams, or at least something that looked remarkably like her, was built remarkably similarly to Meg Mucklebones. So yeah, that's a pretty terrifying nightmare, especially for a little kid to be having. The Boogeyman, yeah. There it is. That is the story. And so I had read that as a little kid. That was one of the things. I was a precocious reader. I was reading along with my parents when I was just a little over a year old. I was starting to learn to sound out words and shit in Dr. Seuss books. I learned to read from Dr. Seuss books. And so my parents, didn't want to stand in my way, and I would see my dad reading Stephen King books all the time. And when, I don't know how old I was, 7 probably. I remember asking him, like, "Hey, can I read one of your books?" And he warned me, like, "Oh, it's pretty scary. I don't know." I was like, "That's okay. I know it's fake." I've read a lot of books. I read a lot of scary books. Yeah, he let me do it. I think the first one that I got was Graveyard Shift. I read it at a really young age. At an age where I really couldn't understand a lot of the themes going on, but I was still able to piece together some of the scenes in it. I remember reading what other Stephen King books was I really into? There's actually one that nobody ever talks about called Eyes of the Dragon. You guys ever read that Stephen King book? It's like a dark fantasy book. It's like Stephen King dipped into like wizards and shit. Which I know it's kind of like the Dark Tower, but it was before the Dark Tower, if I remember properly, or at least adjacent to it. I remember I really liked the book Eyes of the Dragon. I read Salem's Lot as well. That one spooked me. Did you read it before you saw the show? Yeah, I read it before the show was a thing. I've got 2 really old first edition paperbacks of it in my old box of books. The distant fart of humanity. Yeah, it actually stopped for a little while. Who do you think did more coke in the 80s, Stephen King or Rick James? I think they probably were neck and neck for sure. Yeah, yeah. I like pretty much all of Stephen King's, especially his early works. Like, I like The Regulators when he was doing the Richard Bachman stuff. I kind of like stopped reading King in his more modern era. In the 2000s and up, I kind of have lost interest in reading every King book. Like, I would never like impugn Stephen King's talent, but when you read a lot of his works, you find that a lot of themes are eternally reused, and they start to feel like caricatures. At least to me, that's how I feel. I feel like almost every Stephen King book has a quiet little town. Almost every Stephen King book has a sadistic group of bullies. Almost every Stephen King book has a group of empowered nerds. Almost every Stephen King book has this kind of like internal private language that a group of people speak. Like, you'll see that pop up in Stephen King constantly, where they use little code words or have little phrases that they say to each other to evoke certain things. None of this stuff, by the way, is necessarily like abnormal or unreal in terms of like believability. It's just that he uses those themes constantly, over and over again. There's always like a truly sadistic, at least one truly sadistic person or group of people that are almost horror characters in and of themselves, because their sadism typically goes well beyond what normal childhood sadism goes, you know. They're trying to kill people, they're trying to maim people. They're just like avatars of hatred and intolerance, and just like, there's really like no attempt to humanize them at all. And what little attempts there are basically like juxtaposed against the giant inhumanity of them. It just starts to feel very samey. Do you ever have a debate on music, whether it's about a band or the overall state of the industry? I don't really like debates, man. I hate that every time I talk to somebody, and I understand why, it draws the eyes, right? The whole quote-unquote debate has kind of taken on a new meaning. But yeah, I hate that every talk I have with somebody is labeled a debate. It's like, you know, Kyle recently released a little 10-minute like snippet of me and him having our conversation, and he calls it a debate, and I'm just like, man, we we didn't debate, bro. I mean, it is what it is. We had a conversation whereupon I believe we probably agreed with each other 95 to 98% of the time. You know, like we had a convo. It's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's like that. That's the big online thing right now, is the kind of debate bro stuff. And so you want to have that word in your title when you're having a conversation with somebody. Less people are going to click on like, I have a conversation with this guy. Yeah, he did it for me. I like I said, nothing against him. He's hardly the only person doing it. But it's just like, I really do despise that. I really do hate that every time I talk to a human being and maybe there's something contentious in it, we had a debate. It's like, man, it just makes it seem more contentious than it really is in my mind. You know, a conversation is free, man. I was raised that way. It's like a conversation is a conversation, and you might be sitting right across from like the most ideologically opposed person. When you're in that room, a conversation is a conversation is a conversation, man. You can argue a little bit, you can vehemently disagree, but to me, that does not a debate make. Argument is not debate. Hollering at each other is not debate. Yelling at each other is not debate. Getting angry, like that, does all those things can happen in the confines of a debate, but those things do not a debate make. You know? And I think it really undermines the power of conversation. Debate sounds structured and adversarial, right? But a conversation sounds inviting. And we seem intent on couching every time two human beings have a conversation. They're locking horns in a debate. It's just like, man, nah, not really. Most of the times you see something labeled a debate, it's two people sitting and having a conversation. Like, I would, you know, maybe I'm old school that way, but to me, a debate has a moderator, has predefined topics, has very closely adhered to times for people to speak. There's point, counterpoint, rebuttal. There's, you know, a very streamlined path through the conversation to keep it focused on one thing. When you're just opening up the floor and the conversation goes here, there, and there, that's exactly what you're doing. You're having a conversation. You're not having a debate. You know, there's one channel, I think, on YouTube that actually hosts what I would call loosely moderated debates on the regular. It's a modern day debates channel that pops up everywhere because they have everybody on there. And they actually have a predefined topic that both people have been given time to prepare on. They do opening statements, they do equal time, they do an open floor type of debate, which is more like a structured conversation. You know, if you go on that and you submit yourself to those rules, you're engaging in a debate, you know. But if you just go on a dude's show or have somebody on yours to talk, you're doing just that. You're having a conversation. And I really feel like it pushes a whole lot of people out. This is what I feel. This is my honest critique of it. Beyond just being annoyed with what I see as a misuse of the word debate. I think couching everything is an immediately adversarial conversation. Immediately adversarial, performative kind of ritual. You're keeping a lot of people from doing it. I can only imagine makes people reluctant to even have a talk with somebody because they're afraid they're going to get owned in a debate. You know what I mean? We've placed so much importance on a conversation, like not that those aren't important things, but we've added all of this ritual and all of this portent to the top of just people like talking to one another. And how does that affect average people who are watching these things? A lot of the people who are watching these things, and I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of the people who are watching people engage in these types of debate or conversations are socially awkward or have some kind of a phobia of public speech or find it hard to carry conversations. And so they're kind of getting it by proxy through people. And what's radiating out of that community is like, this is the most serious shit ever. And if we disagree, we're just going to snipe each other and there's going to be endless discussion about it because we're at a debate. You know, who wants to get involved in that? I don't, you know, and I don't even mind talking to people. I don't have any marked social anxiety or any kind of problems having a conversation with a person, but I don't want all that noise. Like if Kyle had fucking hit me up and said, hey, Paul's ego, I want to fucking have like a real contentious debate with you, bro. Structured debate. Crystal's gonna be the moderator and we're just gonna go at each other's throat. I want us to eviscerate each other like a couple of sacrificial lambs in front of the audience. I'd have been like, that's okay, bro.
I'm busy.
Yeah, sorry, it's my birthday, you know. My birthday's coming up. No can do. Because I'm just not, you know. I really do think it's destructive. That is something I would love to hear people talk about, especially the people that participate in this structured debate environment that they call it, which is basically just a formalized conversation. I would love to hear what they think about like the people that are watching them that are increasingly becoming less and less willing to engage in one-on-one conversation because they see everything as a win-lose proposition. I'm either going to go into this conversation and talk about my opinions on things and win, or I'm going to lose hard and everybody's going to make fun of me.
It's like people are more and more reluctant to even interact with people that they don't agree with now.
Right.
Like, the slightest little difference, and it's like, I'm cutting this person out of my life.
Yep.
I'm not going to watch him anymore because we disagree on this one thing.
Yeah, it's odd. It's just a very odd place to exist, and I try and abstain from that kind of framing when it comes to stuff that I do. But well, by necessity, most formal debates are civil. They have to be. You don't have time to go off on a rant. You don't have time to be, emotional. Now that's, once again, putting in sharp relief what we call debate now on the internet. That's not the same thing. But yeah, during a debate, things are very carefully measured. Responses are measured. It's not to say that things can't get heated or passionate, but yeah, it does not behoove you to go on a rant during a debate. You have to be very specific. You have to have your argument honed down to a gnat's ass, and you have to have the ability to improvise. When somebody brings up an angle that maybe you haven't considered, or takes the conversation down a road that you didn't consider but that's still adjacent, you got to be able to go with that and use your time effectively as well. And none of the shit that I see labeled as debates are debates, other than that one channel I gave you. And even them, I think even the moderator of that channel would admit that they're loosely moderated debates.
And like with debate too, like a strong debater can debate a side that they don't agree with.
Right. That's the whole point of debate. Debate, like if you're gonna be a debater, you need not worry about marrying yourself to an ideology. The point of debate is the mental exercise of taking a position and defending it against critique. So you might find yourself arguing for something as a debater that you don't necessarily believe, just to provide the educational point counterpoint kind of conversation that other people can absorb. So this whole idea that you're a debater who picks, one uniform position to always debate, that doesn't really hold water in terms of true debate at all.
They'll have competitions and tournaments and shit.
It's because it's not about the content of the debate. It's about the style and ability of the debater. And that's that. Yeah, that's something that bothers me. Because I really don't want to be seen as a debate bro. I don't do that shit, dude. I don't, constantly cover every little debate that's been going on. I don't do any of the debate bro things. I'm not interested in being that. And every time I talk to a person, it's a debate, and it just makes me cringe every time, because I'm just like, man, I really don't want people coming in here with that kind of fucking mentality. Like, can't we just talk? Can't this be a talk? Can't this be a conversation between friends, which is what it was? Kyle and I are not best of buds or whatever. We've known each other a long time. We worked in the same sphere a long time. We've talked a few times in the past. We're buddies. We sat down and had a conversation as buddies. Those people who debate just speak their opinions and say the other is wrong, regardless if they might be right. Therefore, no one wins or loses. I mean, I don't know. It just depends. Bill Vosh's hate for Kyle is misled, but then again, a lot of hate in the world is misled. I don't even really care what Vosh thinks about this, that, or the other thing when it comes to this. I mean, the only way that I would see myself mentioning Vosh in this conversation is as an example of somebody who's ruining the word debate. You know, like
just an example of divisiveness that debate bro culture causes.
I mean, there is really something to the idea that the left, and it's actually something that I'm not even necessarily convinced is a bad thing, but the left is really good at fighting one another. The left is really good at taking two people who agree on probably 95% of policy conservatively and making enemies of them. And that is, you know, why I try with my advocacy when I have these talks to start. And one of the things I talked to Kyle about, once again, I found another reason to bring up Daryl Davis during my conversation with Kyle a couple of days ago. And we discussed contact theory and its place within the union structure. Those things are important to me. Bringing people together who maybe have wholly different ideas socially, but that are benefited economically by a number of ideas. That's where contact theory can start to work. Bringing people together to advocate for their own best interests and not looking at, you know, your coworker as a stranger and not relegating your coworker to this, that, or the other political stripe without ever working with them, without ever standing shoulder to shoulder with them. You know, that to me is what we as leftists should be fostering, because we can't win if we're just going to take this 50-50 divided country and exclude 50% of them. Like, if we don't try and make some sort of inroad with people who are ideologically different than us, we can't find some sort of commonality, we got no chance, man. We're just being played both ends against the middle.
And that's the deadlock and gridlock that's been going on lately.
Yeah. And there's another thing too. I wanted to get to it with Kyle, but we ended up kind of getting to the end of the thing. We were on the road to it. I really hate how non-voters are portrayed as people who don't care. I think that if you actually talked to non-voters, you would find that there are people that care very intensely and don't feel like that they have any outlet for those concerns in the electoral system. And if you don't address that, you can quote theory at me all day, and you can quote pragmatism at me all day and utilitarianism at me all day. If you're not willing to address the fact that despite all of your efforts, I really don't feel like anybody that goes to Washington or to the state cares about me, then I'm not going to vote. That's something that I hate, man. I hate this idea. And look, no doubt there are people that just don't give a fuck about politics, don't want to, they're bored by it, and they don't participate. I'm not saying those people don't exist, but I hate how that's the brush that everybody that doesn't vote gets painted with. Oh, these people just don't give a shit. Why? Why don't they give a shit? Do you think it might have something to do with the fact that they're constantly lied to and then constantly disappointed on the back end?
Or just seeing that both parties are just playing ping pong.
You don't think that has anything to do with the huge majority of people in the United States that are like me? Let me expand your point. The left is really good at labeling everyone in the center the enemy. They're really good at labeling the enemy, period. They make enemies of one another constantly. It's part of the thing. This is very divisive, personality-driven shit that ignores the commonality between leftists and wastes its time spinning out over the minutia. You know what I mean? And not looking at the big picture, not trying to find inroads. And I really don't see any other type of ideology or idea pushing that in the way that labor does. Labor is the only thing that I see that doesn't have a litmus test for whether or not you believe this, that, or the other thing. It's a distinctly leftist movement that is all-inclusive. And that's where I stack my chips. Because I realize that there's no way that you can mobilize just leftist workforces. There's no such thing in the world as a leftist workforce, not in the United States. So you've got to be able to reach your hand across the aisle and shake the hand of a person who might not like you very much. And you have to understand that part of the work that you're doing as a leftist is exposing people to the reality of your humanity. You know? That's it.
I think with labor too is like the biggest anti-union stuff is kind of centered around like, oh, you don't have any freedom in a union, but really you have the most freedom because
Right.
you can be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah. You can be an advocate for yourself, the other people that work for you, and the people that work in your industry besides.
You're not hampered by just the conditions that they impose on you.
Right.
Like you're getting paid this much and that's it.
There's a difference between IRL leftist organizers and online weirdos you're talking about. Yeah, but I don't really think there necessarily needs to be. The bourgeois political system is set up to promote apathy in voters switching from one center-right party to a right-wing party back and forth. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The same bourgeois doesn't convince many people.
No.
It's a very academic word that's going to shut a lot of ears.
Yeah. There really is. I'm not sure how to do it, but there really is a distinct lack in the modern left to reach anybody that isn't in their little insular in group. And that is tragic. And before, people start fucking writing screeds about me, I'm not talking about sitting and soaking up racist bullshit. I'm not talking about keeping your mouth shut. I'm talking about, like, willing yourself to have a conversation with these people and taking stock of what they disagree with you on and what they agree with you on. That's all. What kind of issues, and this is like class consciousness here, what kind of issues affect me and the guy next door to me? Bills, energy costs, food costs. These are not left or right things. Everybody's wallet's getting hit the same. So there's commonality there.
And a lot of the things that you might disagree with that person on, they might not even hold it as a very close belief. They might just be tribalistically saying, like, oh, all the Republicans think this, so I think this too.
Right. And you may be shocked if you actually talk to some people that you think are just gone and unreachable. I'm surprised almost every time I talk to somebody who considers themselves like a hard Republican or something. Almost every time. Because I find a sense of commonality amongst not just on economic and class-based issues, but on the silliness and shittiness of American electoral politics. There's a bridge to be built there, and we're not going to build it by shit flinging at each other, And the idea is, you keep in mind Daryl Davis as you do this. You keep in mind contact hypothesis, which has shown unequivocally that the gulfs between people ideologically are immensely shrunk when those people work together for a common cause. Working together for commonality
is the fertile ground in which racism, classism, bigotry, and hatred, all of that stuff goes to die. That's the graveyard of bigotry, is people that don't agree working together. And, one of the most stark and easy to point out examples of that is Daryl Davis, a black man who spent a good portion of his life sitting down one-on-one and in small groups to talk to people that, like, most of us wouldn't even walk across the street to, slap in the face. Talking Ku Klux Klan members. And he's got, like, I don't know, some 70, 80, 90 Ku Klux Klan robes that he's literally had given to him by these people who he, by his example, was able to convince that, people of color are human. So I really can't hear any arguments against it. One guy can personally deconvert 50, 60, 70 Ku Klux Klan members, one person. Then what's our excuse?
And think about how many people they were probably just racist because their dad was racist or their family.
It's about breaking the chain.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily that they have these deeply held beliefs. It's just that they were inoculated in them.
I'll tell you this: if I was raised in a place that was more segregated, like if I was raised in a place that had an implicit, this is the white school and this is the brown school, and I went to all the little white schools growing up, there's a good chance I'd be sitting in front of you a racist right now. There's a good chance. It was only the example of being friends with, commiserating with, spending time with people of color who at home I was being told were scum, lazy, shiftless, shady, all those things, right? And then I would go to my Hispanic friends' houses, and I would see their families doing exactly what my family does. Mom's making dinner, dad's coming home from work late, big brother's locked in his room listening to rap music, little brother's playing Nintendo. Oh my God. Daryl Davis is demonized by most leftists. That's because he's effective. He's effective in a way that requires a whole lot of personal sacrifice, and they don't want that. They really honestly think that they're just going to bludgeon people into their way of thinking. They're going to name call and otherize until that person goes like, oh yeah, you're right. And everything points to the fact that does nothing but deepen the gulf between people. It doesn't build bridges to call somebody stupid.
People just dig their heels in deeper.
Yeah. I mean, think about how it feels like when you're called, like when I call one of you stupid. If you've been called stupid by me in here, did that really bridge a gap between me and you? Did that create any more likelihood to sympathize with me and you? Probably not. It probably made you feel immediately attacked and immediately justified in doubling down on whatever you disagreed with me about. Now, I'm not trying to claim I'm, blameless in this. I'm just trying to have a conversation about what I see as a tactic that's horribly underutilized. Nobody wants to put in the time. Nobody wants to suck it up because you know what? Until you've done it a few times, this is another one of the problems. Nobody knew about Daryl Davis until years after he'd been doing what he was doing. He did what he did in complete and utter obscurity. Your average human being never even heard about what he was doing. And they hate that. It doesn't come with the accolades immediately. You got to put in 10, 15 years of work to start to get noticed as a person who's doing this. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Nobody wants to do the hard work. Everybody wants to jump to the front of the line and just be the meanest Billy Badass on the block with the best vocabulary and the most descriptive ways to call a person stupid. And that's the victory plan. How stupid can I make these people feel until they agree with me? I know he was on Rogan. I was just saying, it took years and years for him to get that elevated level of perception of what he was doing.
Took years and years before he broke into the mainstream and people started talking about him. And even then, when I say the name Daryl Davis, oftentimes people never heard of him. People that listen to me have heard of him because I talk about him a lot.
Like all these like states that people write off as like, oh, they're all backwards and stupid. It's like you could make them not backward and stupid if you like went over there.
Not only that, but people are ignoring like just the truth. Like Texas is looked at like one of those places that's just yeehaw backward stupid. That place is on the cusp of flipping to a way more liberal way of thinking. The amount of migrant and immigrant families in Texas grows constantly. So this idea that these places are just monoliths of old Jim Crow racism or whatever, there's tons of black people, there's tons of people of color, there's tons of people of, different fucking religious backgrounds. And they're not a monolith down there, man. There's ground to be made, even amongst like really staunch and outspoken people. If you actually talk to people who are very like forward politically minded Republicans, you will find areas of commonality between Republicans and Democrats or rightists and leftists. And I'm advocating for exploiting those commonalities. And I really don't see the only venue for that being labor. It's the only place where you don't get to pick and choose who you're hanging out with. So that means there's going to be racists. That means there's going to be people that have got backwards ideas about gender and sex. And how are those people going to unlearn that? What's a better way to demonstrate the stupidity of a line of thinking, especially an exclusionary line of thinking that otherizes another human being, than being exposed to a bunch of human beings that fit that criteria but don't act the way that you expected them to? That's it, man.
Like these Amazon warehouses are designed to be otherizing because they have such a high churn rate.
Yeah. But it's not something you get to see immediate results from. You really have to dedicate yourself to the principle. And you'll have some surprising moments. I tried to bring one of those moments up with Fosh the last time I talked with him, where I had recently as of that conversation with him, had a conversation with my cousins who are all right-wing dudes, Trump dudes, also unionists. They're right-wing dudes who in California vote for the left-wing guy. And I was bowled over by that when they said that. Oh no, yeah, we vote Gavin Newsom. What? Because he's such a boogeyman. It just goes to show you how easy it is to break that fucking cycle and how easy it is to find some commonality that you didn't expect. You watch the media and you think, well, everybody out there with a little country accent hates Gavin Newsom. And I'm not even trying to hold up Gavin Newsom as some sort of bastion. I'm just showing you, like, that's a right-wing boogeyman right there. And here you have like 4 Trumpy MAGA hat wearing dudes that all cast their vote for him. I asked them why. Because he shows up when we invite him to our union stuff. He's willing to hear us out at our union meeting every year. And the Republican never even shows up, never even responds to our invitation, so fuck him. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Definitely, like, the political race has that issue, too, where it's like they only go to the states that they know they're going to win or have a chance of winning.
Right. I mean, there are people that, like in California, you never get, like, tons of campaigning going on in California. It's like one of those places that's pretty much assured to go one way. And even like the flyover states and stuff, like you can live your whole life and never have a political rally near you. Yeah, there's just no.
Except Iowa.
Yeah, true.
If you're an Iowan, then
Or an Ohioan.
yeah.
Republicans want to work 18 hours, want people to work 18 hours in a coal mine for 16 cents an hour. There's a lot of Republicans that are working in those coal mines for 16 cents an hour. And let me be frank with you, none of them want to be making less than their worth. And the Amazon union that recently passed in Staten Island is great, but it's such a tenuous situation, man. That wave needs to keep happening.
Yeah, because otherwise they're just going to find an excuse to shut that place down.
Yeah. They'll just move it.
Be like, oh, we have some structural thing or something. We got to shut it down or whatever it is.
Yep.
We can't be profitable or whatever the fuck.
Like if there's not a concerted effort to continue the momentum of this, then I fear it will all be for naught. But I'm excited for those people. I mean, that's a huge deal. There was like $5 million or so spent by Amazon on just anti-union shit in a couple of their stores, a couple of their centers.
Yeah, dude. They probably sacrificed like millions of dollars of productivity just to like do those captive meetings and shit.
Oh yeah. And that's part of what eventually, like, the bottom line ticket comes home, and it's like it's part of bleeding the company. You know, there's a reason why people that cross a picket line are called scabs. It's not just a gross term for somebody that you don't like. They're literally acting like scabs on the wound that you've opened up in the company. You are bleeding the company with your strike action. Every second that the machinery is not running, every second that the business is closed, is a second where maybe, $1,000 is going out the window. And if you cross a strike line, you're scabbing over the wound. That's why you're called a scab. That's part of how unions get a concession. You bleed the company of funds, resources. You bleed the company of public publicity.
Labor is expensive, but you have to make it more expensive to not pay you more.
Yeah. I really feel like, just in general, the left needs to up its labor IQ because conditions are approaching like Gilded Age levels. People having to work multiple jobs, people like working their entire day away and not having enough to buy fucking food and shit. We're rapidly approaching, an analog to a period of time in America that was just bloody with worker revolution. So,
like, how can you work if you can't keep a roof over your head and
right.
feed yourself?
Right. And like, trust me, the ruling class, the owner class, they have no empathy for that. They will squeeze you until you can't be squoze. And so we're rapidly approaching that. People can't afford housing. People can't afford food. Child care has become ridiculous. The idea of owning a home has become ridiculous for most working people. What's next?
Yeah. Retirement, like, there's going to be a whole lot of broke 70-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of retirement for my generation is a dream. I was talking to my parents about that. My mom and stepdad are retired now. They just recently paid off the last little payment on their house. They're all excited about that, and they were talking about it. And I was, congratulating them on that. And then we got to talking about it, and I said, my generation isn't going to even have the option that you guys had to have something that's yours. just not going to even be given it, you know, and it's rapidly approaching that. A lot of the conditions are the same. So back in the Gilded Age, just post-Civil War, there were tons of these like robber barons and giant conglomerated companies that controlled the price of labor by just sheer dominance of the market, and those companies had to be broken up. And tell me we're not right there again. Just giant companies swallowing giant companies every week, mergers and shit that just like shouldn't fly given our fucking legislative blocks against it. But we've found enough cheese whiz loopholes in that to just put ourselves right back in the same position, you know. And I'm telling you, man, it was a bloody time in America. We're not talking pretty here. People had to die en masse in the streets for the concession for years. Riots, massacres. Of course, the cops being the enforcement arm for the owner class. Constant harassment, constant legal action, constant jockeying by these giant moneyed entities to keep their hands on what they see as theirs and theirs alone. Yours is to work and mine is to capitalize. That's their idea. And they don't listen to anything other than unity and solidarity amongst the working class. It's the only weapon we got against them. You think like us fiddle-diddling at each other as leftists online is doing anything other than push people away from us? Be real about it. Do you think that gaps are being bridged by debate bro culture? Do you think that people are being reached? I don't. I think people are being shoved away at an ever-increasing pace. I don't think that those things are bringing over swaths of people out of the right. I think they're acting as a buffer against that type of work. And as they become more and more personality driven and the arguments become more and more inscrutably stupid and petty and ego driven, you really think that people are just soaking that up and going, oh man, I gotta join this. I gotta repudiate everything I've been taught as a child and really get on board with this shit. Give me a break, dude. At what point does the occurrence of mass unionization become an absolute inevitability? I don't know if there's a number-based tipping point that I could give you. I think we're seeing it happen. I don't think it happens like all in one giant thing. I think we're starting to see the nascent beginnings of a revitalized union culture in America just out of sheer necessity. Out of sheer necessity, not being able to meet your monthly obligations, but working your ass to the fucking bone. Like, can anybody argue that that's not the case for most people in this country? So that's what's driving it. And you're seeing, in my opinion, the front edge of a mass labor movement in this country. Whether or not it'll be enough, whether or not it'll be timely enough, or happen quick enough, I don't know. But all you have to do is read your history to see what happens when the owner class squeezes the working class to the point of, unsustainability in their lives. It's happened before. It'll happen again. The last one was driven by the Great Depression, which is worse than what we're facing. I wouldn't be so sure. See, once again, I think you neglect to make note of the fact that this is a progressive problem. This is not something that's just static. It's progressively getting worse for people. So to say that what we're facing now isn't as bad as the Great Depression is ignoring the fact that, you know, this is an ongoing thing where year to year it gets worse. Maybe we haven't reached the bottom of the Great Depression yet, but to say that we're not due for a giant market correction and shit, I mean, the absurdity of the pumping of Wall Street that has to come home to roost. So it's a matter of time, you know. Now, the established unions can be taken over from within. They're inherently democratic institutions, and those of them that are resistant to that sort of thing will find themselves on the business end of the workers that they represent. There's a, you know, kind of a self-correcting mechanism that can happen in a vibrant labor movement. I'm not so much worried about that. I think that involving yourself in any kind of labor organization is better than the fucking alternative at this point. I'm not going to be picky about who does it and where. Those things are malleable, man. You get enough people on the inside, and they're, you know, you're not going to be able to be a little corporate friendly unionist. You know what I mean? People are fucking starving. People's kids don't have anybody to watch them. It's a fucking crisis. People can't afford their rent next month. This is no joke. And this is the type of shit that goes by the wayside so that leftists can argue like ridiculous esoteria. You know, just like absolutely absurdly ridiculous esoteric fucking topics. What was that recent mama with demon mama drama? I didn't watch the original drama thing, but I watched her like wrap up of it. And from what I can tell, she had a drama with Vosh over supply chains and whether or not people can make their own medicine and shit. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And this is what everybody was talking about for days in this corner of leftism. Like, where's the eject button, bro? Where's the eject button out of this shit, man? Who is even fucking talking about that shit? People are starving, man. People are going under. People are falling off the fucking rolls. And you're a leftist. Wake up. I just can't take that shit seriously on either side, dude. The posturing and the fucking bullshit. You kidding me, man? This is what leftists do, is sit and argue about fucking esoteric nonsense while the goddamn climate is collapsing and while workers are being squeezed harder and harder and while the politicians they simp for just fucking jerk the choke chain ever harder. This is what leftists are up doing. Get real, man. Finding a way to somehow like be a leftist but also simp for like the international fucking oligarchy. That's one that I'll never get over, man. All the NATO polishing going on the left right now is just like, man, are you fucking real? Aren't a bunch of you like anarchists? What is going on, man? Ugh. Skeeves me, man. It really does. It honestly gives me the fucking willies. That's why I just raised my hands up and took a step back. Same Same. This is not my group. Scratch an anarchist and a liberal bleeds. It's starting to feel that way, man. Like, what the fuck? I'm an anarchist, but let's talk about how fucking based NATO is. Huh? I'm running off to Cambodia soon. Hey, man, run through the jungle. Better run through the jungle. You talk about absurd times. There's an article somewhere out there that says a light nuclear war might be good and help climate change. Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah, if like a significant number of the population is killed, I mean, there's definitely going to be less people spewing less carbon into the atmosphere. So there you go, man. You can't argue with that. Like, what? Inflation, gas, rising store prices completely erased my $1 raise and put it in perspective for me. I mean, yeah, it's been happening for 40 years. Wages have been flat versus inflation and cost of living for 40 fucking years in this country. How can we find any common ground when the most important issue in this country is whether or not trans athletes destroy women's sports? Bro, can I speak on this? There are layers of absurdity to this argument. There are people that, quite honestly, couldn't have given a fuck about women's sports. The fairness within, the obvious biological scale that biological women are born on, where some of them are big and strong and some of them are small and not strong. They couldn't care less. Couldn't care less other than to laugh at it and joke at it. You guys remember, like, the WNBA it was like the butt of jokes up until this stuff, you know. And so this idea that, like, all of a sudden everybody who happens to be politically aligned against trans people suddenly cares about the fairness of female sports, it just makes me want to puke. Number two, you know, they keep, like, prophesying this wave of, like, trans women that are just winning everything, and the examples are the exact opposite. A trans person wins every once in a fucking blue moon, and most of the time they don't even place. So this idea that they're just like, I don't know, man. And then there's the whole, like, what the fuck does it matter element to sports? Like, isn't sports just entertainment? It's a sports ball. You know, good for the people that invest their time and energy pursuing it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but, like, come on. We don't have anything other than crying about inclusivity for trans people. See, I love this idea that we should create, like, a trans league for trans people. There aren't enough. It's just absurd on the face of it. Let's create a trans league for sports. Who's going to play in it? There are so few trans people in comparison to the average person. Who's going to be in it? And if there's not enough people to make a league or a sport just out of trans people, then why don't they have the right to participate in any kind of sport, but you do? You're arguing for creating an underclass of people who just aren't allowed to participate in one of the pastimes of the world because of circumstances beyond their control. So, I don't know, man. Just this sudden wave of care from certain media elements and pundits and stuff. where they're all of a sudden just overly concerned about absolute fairness in female sports, when 5 years ago they couldn't have fucking cared less if we canceled every female sport. Paul, do you know what will happen next now that Amazon has a unionized warehouse? Well, either that movement will continue to spread to other warehouses and start unionizing them, or it will peter out there and the company will find a way to screw all those people over. And that's it. That's my take. How did your acting career go? I never had an acting career. I never acted professionally. Well, I guess that's not true. I was in professional productions, but I never did it for money. Like, I was in professional level theater productions, but I was never like a working actor or whatever. I was a starving artist. I worked at Starbucks. That's how I made my money. It's more entertaining to watch people compete at a similar level instead of getting destroyed. Right. And so you show me an example of trans athletes absolutely destroying everybody that competes with them, and I'll listen to that argument. Because as we see now, it just doesn't happen that way. Most trans people that compete in their sport don't place. Just the truth. So when that actually becomes a problem, we can take it up. We'll take up the ethics of it, okay? I saw a video from 2007 where you said you were an aspiring actor. Yeah, I mean, back in 2007, I was doing a lot of stage work, and I would have loved to have been like I'm trying to remember the name of it, an equity actor. So just a person that gets paid to travel around the United States and be in productions. There's not a lot of openings for those types of actors, and it's a very heavily competitive environment. But yeah, no, I would have loved to have done that, but I never did. Never got to that point. I actually just kind of like burned myself out on trying to work and act at the same time. There was at one point where I did back-to-back shows, and then a fourth, another performance of one of the shows that I had done previously for the competition circuit. So I did 1, 2, 3 shows without any real genuine pause, other than maybe like a week between, wrapping one show and starting principal read-throughs and principal rehearsals for the next show. So just boom, 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 all the while maintaining, a full-time job. And I got to the end of that little 4-show cycle, and I was just like, man, I can't do this. If I was getting paid, I could do that. If I could just like cut my hours back at Starbucks, and, cut them in half and get some money out of this, I could have done it. But that's just not, it's not an option. I know a guy in equity. He waited 20 years to get an equity apartment in New York City. Yeah. Did you ever do plays again? Yeah, I don't know. Part of me thinks I would have a whole lot of fun doing it, and that would be a really enriching exercise, and part of me looks at the amount of shit that I'm already producing and the schedule for that and goes like, when? When am I doing this? I know I would love to see you guys do skits. You have creative talent for writing comedic dialogue. You guys bring that out anytime you banter and do impersonations. Yeah. Well, I get to scratch a little bit of that actory itch. Man, there's just, I can't imagine anybody has a yard big enough for over like 90 straight minutes. Who has a yard that big in this neighborhood? Paul, will you be my uncle? Nope. As it is, man. I've got a growing gaggle of nieces and nephews. I'm an uncle. I figured it out 11 times over. Or 12. I think it might actually be 12. I've got 12 nieces and nephews, bro. I'm not hiring. Saw your sneak peek clip on Kyle's show. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. It was a good conversation. How come we don't see you guys smoke on DFF? I smoke on DFF all the time. So I don't know what you're talking about. So does TJ and Scotty. So I'm really not sure what you're talking about. You gotta pay Paul for now. I'm not even like accepting money. I got plenty of nieces and nephews. Any details on how that'll be released? I know it goes up on Spotify in audio form for free, and I think that if you want the whole video, you got to be like a $5 donator. If you go to the little preview video on Kyle's channel, it'll tell you how to get the whole thing, or whatever. I think it'll probably come out in like a week. Like I think when TJ did his, I had to wait like a week before it came out on Spotify so I could listen to it. And so it's pretty much the best I can give you. It'll be up for everybody to listen to at the very least. And it's not a very visually interesting thing either. It's me sitting there with my red LEDs all the way up, because I found that color of light doesn't make me this is kind of a weird thing, but just as a quick aside, one of the things that I've learned about myself is that I have sometimes photosensitive anxiety, and light with a lot of blue in it will actually touch that off, as well as focusing on the wrong things out in a sunny day like this. Like I love the feeling of the sun, but I have to kind of like keep my eyes away from the concrete and stuff. Come and say you're living in hell talking to Kyle. Yeah, I did look like I do look like it's burning me up, but no, it actually helps. Like it lights me so that people can see kind of what's going on in my face, and it's a color of light that does not like trigger that response in me. I can actually just like sit in it and it feels okay. So that's one of the things that I've struggled with in terms of like being on camera all the time and stuff, is like if you want to look, like you got a set and you're trying to light it right and stuff, you got to have these like super blue, not like incandescent blue or whatever, but there's like a lot of blue tint to the natural light spectrum and shit. You just got to have that right in your face. You got to get it like multiple angles right in your face, and it's just look up and around and you're blinded and you have to it's just an uncomfortable thing to be under light all day. Is there a starting incident for your anxiety? I don't know, not really. I mean, I've had it for a very long time. Since I was a little kid, I had symptoms of it. It's amazing how everyone's anxiety is. The human brain sucks. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of commonality between people that suffer anxiety, but it definitely manifests itself in its own unique way per person. Same is true for kind of any neurodivergence, I think. You can have like a general descriptor of the possible side effects and consequences in a person's life, but it really is an individual's story. Maybe somebody's digging a trench or something. It sounds like a lawnmower. Maybe it's like some kind of fucking work being done over there. Maybe it's a wood chipper. Maybe. It's hard to tell from this distance. Anyway, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.